A fitting night to pass out some candy. So in the Jewish tradition, some of the most sacred moments that we have often begin not with prayer and not with study, but with food. Don't get too excited. I'm not making a reprise of my top 5 favorite ways to break the fast. But we are talking about food this evening. Before God speaks to Abraham, angels appear and are fed. Before the prophet Elijah teaches, he is offered bread under a tree. And even God, in one of our most well-known psalms, Psalm 23, is described as the one who prepares a table before me. Feeding someone is not a distraction from holiness. It is the gateway to it. And so what happens when we stop feeding? As of tomorrow, November 1st, due to the federal government shutdown, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, will be suspended, and no new benefits will be distributed. So overnight, more than 42 million Americans will have lost access to the program that helps put food on their tables, including children and working families, veterans, seniors, and people living with disabilities. And here in Hamilton County, the numbers are quite staggering. Roughly 97,000 of our neighbors, including 43,000 children, depend on SNAP benefits. The data shows that more than 1 in 8 residents do not know where their next meal will come from. And for school-aged children, that number rises to nearly 1 in 5. Across the United States, every single county faces hunger in one form or another. And so here in Cincinnati, we see ourselves as part of a national crisis, not a distant one. And this is not just a policy failure of our government, but it is truly a moral crisis, and is one that we cannot ignore. And over the past several weeks, I have been reading reports and policy briefings and community bulletins and responses from Jewish organizations anticipating the impact that this is going to cause. And as a people of conscience, we must look closely at what this moment demands from us, not only as citizens, but also as Jews. And I believe that the Torah has something urgent and something necessary for us to hear. Because when we talk about hunger, we are not only talking about food, but we are talking about justice, and we are talking about human dignity, and whether we as a people will live up to the values that we claim to have. It is not lost on me that the last time I addressed the congregation, I also spoke about food. Though it is one thing to joyfully and humorously speak about the top 5 ways to break the fast, and something entirely different to ask the question, what is my obligation in combating food insecurity in my own community? And on this topic, the Mishnah teaches this powerful concept. Im ein kemach, ein Torah. Im ein Torah, im kemach. Without flour, without sustenance, there is no Torah. And without Torah, there is no sustenance. This rabbinic wisdom teaches us on 2 different levels, the spiritual and the practical. On the one hand, Torah is our spiritual sustenance. It is how we fill ourselves up. But on the other hand, and in a much more practical sense, we lack the strength to even engage with Torah if we don't have our basic needs met. Rav Elazar ben Azariah knew something that every hungry person knows. We cannot serve God on a woefully empty stomach. Now, on Yom Kippur and on other Jewish fast days, many of us find it challenging to concentrate and pray after skipping just a few meals. And yet, most of us look forward to some beautiful spread at the break the fast later that evening. But imagine how challenging it would be to study, to pray, to work, to parent, to plan for the future, if you did not know if or how you would eat that night. And in this way, the lack of distribution of SNAP benefits is not just about food, but again, it is about human dignity, and it is about justice. And it is about who we are as Jews and how we go about this world. In this week's Torah portion, God calls to Avram with just 2 words, Lech lecha, go forth. Go to a place that you do not know, leave your comfort behind, step into something uncertain but purposeful. And Abraham could have stayed where he was. In fact, it would have been much easier, significantly easier, for him to stick within his status quo. But instead, he goes. And in return, God tells him, in this week's Torah portion, you shall be a blessing. And in many ways, this feels like a gentle and loving gift. This language, you shall be a blessing. It is used in much of Jewish discourse. It is set to beautiful music, and it is framed as Abraham's reward for the trust he places in God. However, we are not to understand these words as a passive gift. You shall be a blessing. It is in the language of mitzvah. It is a command, a job description. You, Abraham, are responsible for spreading blessing. And so are we. To be a Jew is not to receive blessings, but it is to become one. We are called upon to embody God's goodness in this world. So what does that look like today in a week where families might go hungry? Judaism does not separate the sacred and the physical. We do not believe in locking holiness here in our sanctuary. We believe in the holiness of a warm meal, the holiness of a full pantry, of feeding our neighbors before we study Torah with them. Without sustenance, there is no Torah. And that is why our tradition commands us again and again to care for the poor, the hungry, and the stranger. The Torah tells us to leave the corners of our fields for the poor. It instructs us in our harvesting to allow the gleaning of fallen stalks and the forgotten sheaves during the harvest festivals. The prophet Isaiah teaches that true fasting is to share your bread with the hungry and not to turn away from your kin. Our sages knew it well. If there is no food, there is no learning, no prayer, no growth, no future. And yet, if there is no Torah, there is no sustenance. Because it is Torah that teaches us that a hungry child matters just as much as our own child. That a stranger's need is not someone else's burden, but it is ours. And in the modern Jewish world, organizations like Mazon, a Jewish response to hunger, live out these values. They lobby Congress to protect SNAP benefits and expand food access. This week, they have educated Jewish communities about hunger policy, and they remind us that each of us has a responsibility not only to give food, but to fight for systems that prevent hunger. And this week, as SNAP benefits disappear for 42 million Americans, Mazon's leaders called on Jews around the country to speak up for justice, for compassion, and for access. And we can help them. We must help them. And so I don't often do this from the Bima, but I will encourage you to visit the website mazon.org, that is mazon.org, to see how you can give or how you can take action on a national or on a local level. And additionally, right here at home, Wise Temple is stepping forward as well. From November 2nd to November 9th, we are collecting non-perishable food items to support Operation Give Back, a local organization that provides emergency food assistance to our neighbors. Now, I will say that this initiative that you've likely not heard about is because it is primarily aimed at our religious school families, as we're trying to help them understand their necessity and their role that they play in this as well. We are asking students to bring donations to Kehila, to the religious school, on Sunday, November 2nd and 9th. However, all are welcome to participate. Similar to our High Holy Day food drive, you can drop items off in the temple lobby on either of these next 2 Sundays or any time during this week. And together, we will assemble emergency food bags to ensure that the donations reach those who need them most. It is our hope that we might turn our abundance into blessings once again this year, as we did just a few months ago. In our Torah portion, Abraham did not know where he was going when he heard God's call, but he said yes. And similarly, when we give, we don't always know where our food will end up or who exactly we are going to help. But when we give and when we advocate and when we show up in this way, we say yes to our highest callings as Jews. We become the ones who feed, the ones who bless, the ones who say that your hunger is my concern and your dignity is sacred to me. And that is Torah. That is justice. That is who we are. And so I'd like to conclude with a prayer written this week by Rabbi Michael Rothbaum, who shared with supporters of Mazon, a Jewish response to hunger. Rabbi Rothbaum writes, "In this moment of threatened starvation and degradation, give us the courage to fulfill the vision, to face down the pharaohs who exploit the suffering of our neighbors, to persist until every one of our precious souls is fed and housed and clothed. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, God of employers and employees, God of lawgivers and laborers, God of homeowners and home health workers, package handlers and pastors and presidents, God of minimum wage and maximum love and infinite justice, please hear our words and help us heal our land, that we may march forward together out of hunger and scarcity and into sustenance and sacred dignity, into a liberated nation, a nation of well-fed children and full hearts, and of holy laws of love and justice."